Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're going deep, really deep into the Silva Mind Control Method.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's based on José Silva's book. It's got this fascinating mix of practical stuff and then some pretty out there claims about training our minds to do these incredible things. So are we really capable of harnessing our mental power to that extent? Let's dive in and see what we can uncover.
You know, one thing that makes the Silva Method really interesting is that it popped up way back in the 1940s.
Oh yeah, that's before the whole self-help movement really took off.
Exactly, and it all came from Silva's own relentless research into what the human mind could do. He was really driven.
And his journey, it all began with a pretty unique encounter, didn't it?
It did?
Something about an army psychiatrist during World War II, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, you're right. So Silva, he was a self-taught electronics expert. He was really struck by how, simple the questions were that this army psychiatrist was asking military inductees.
Like he was expecting something more complex.
Exactly. And it really got him thinking, why would this expert in the human mind be focused on these really basic questions? And that kind of sparked his lifelong quest, you know, to figure out the true complexity and potential of the mind.
So it's almost like he thought there's got to be more to this, and he was so committed that he even financed all of his research himself.
Totally. That independent approach was really key for him because it let him dive into those unconventional ideas without any of the restrictions that, say, an institution might have.
Yeah, makes sense. And one of those most unconventional ideas was his belief that alpha and theta brainwave states, the ones we usually associate with relaxing or even being drowsy.
Right.
Well, he believed those states actually hold the key to these heightened mental abilities.
It's fascinating, right? Because most people would think, oh, those are just for sleep or daydreaming. But Silva believed that these lower frequencies, the ones people often ignore, actually make our minds more active.
Oh, wow. That's kind of counterintuitive.
It is. He compared it to electrical circuits. A circuit with less resistance works better. He thought a brain operating at a lower frequency could be more powerful and receptive too.
So it's like he wanted to reduce that mental noise to make our minds clearer and more powerful.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, I like that analogy, but how did he actually think we could use these states to access and utilize them,
Well, he developed a system, a structured approach he called the Silva Method, which was all about training people to tap into those deeper states.
So we could use them for things like problem solving and achieving goals.
Exactly. He even called it mind control.
Okay, now that term definitely grabs your attention. The book is full of stories about people using the method to achieve, some incredible things, like that city planner, right? The one who used the method to find some lost blueprints by digging up forgotten memories.
Right. And there's the story of the traveler who saw their lost plane ticket just by entering the alpha level. They found it tucked between some books.
Wow. So even though they're just stories, they really make you think about what this method could be capable of, right?
Absolutely. It really highlights how we can maybe access information that's buried in our subconscious.
It's almost like something out of a sci-fi movie, but let's get into how this method actually works. There's this mental screen that the book talks about. What exactly is that?
The mental screen is really key to the whole thing.
Okay, so how do you actually use it?
So you're in this alpha state and you basically picture a mental canvas in your mind. And then you project images on it, visualize goals, or even work through problems. It's all about using that canvas to focus your mental energy and direct your subconscious toward whatever you're trying to achieve.
Okay, so it's like your mind's own whiteboard where you can work out ideas and intentions.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
I remember the book also talks about a taxi driver using this mental screen to navigate around unfamiliar streets.
Oh yeah, that was a great example.
He was reliving past routes as if he had a mental map of the city.
That's right. It shows how you can use these techniques in your everyday life to boost your memory, get better at solving problems, or even improve your spatial awareness.
Right, so it's not just some esoteric concept.
Not at all.
And these techniques go beyond just visualizing things. The book lays out a whole step-by-step process, starting with entering that alpha state. Then you use the mental screen, visualization, and even affirmations. It's like a complete system for mastering your mind.
Exactly. Hey, did you notice how much emphasis Silva puts on positive self-talk and what he calls mental house cleaning?
Yeah, so it's like decluttering your mind and getting rid of all those negative thoughts that can hold you back.
That's it. And that idea really connects with a lot of modern self-improvement methods.
For sure.
Silva was really ahead of his time, recognizing how powerful our thoughts are and how much they affect our well-being. He thought that if we consciously chose positive thoughts and beliefs, we could actually create a more supportive environment in our minds.
So our thoughts create the environment for growth and success.
Yeah, exactly.
And he believed that we could use this system for achieving tons of goals.
He did.
From enhancing memory and speeding up learning to things like breaking bad habits, improving our health, even making relationships better.
There's even an exercise in the book for couples, using visualization to strengthen their bond. It's fascinating how he saw these principles applying to all these different aspects of life.
Wow, now those are some ambitious claims. But let's break those applications down one by one. In the book, he mentions this 3 fingers technique. It's supposed to help with remembering things, right?
Right. It's a pretty simple technique, actually.
So how does it work?
It's all about conditioning. You basically train yourself to associate touching 3 fingers together with a specific memory or piece of information.
Okay, so I keep practicing that while focusing on what I want to remember.
Yeah, and by doing that over and over, you build up this strong mental connection. Then, when you need to recall that information, you just touch your fingers together. It's like a trigger.
It sounds almost too easy. Like, is there any real scientific basis for this?
Actually, there is. It uses the principles of anchoring and association. They're very well-established concepts in psychology. It's like you create this physical anchor, the touching of your fingers, and it becomes a cue for accessing that specific memory.
Oh, I see. So it's not magic. It's really about strategically using how our brains naturally connect things.
That's exactly it. Silva was a real pioneer in exploring this interplay between our conscious and subconscious minds, and how we can actually learn to influence our subconscious processes.
That's really cool. Another technique that caught my eye was the speed learning one, where you record information and listen to it in the alpha state. Is there any evidence that this actually works?
There have been some studies that suggest it might. The idea is that when you're relaxed and receptive, it's easier to take in information quickly and deeply.
Like your mind isn't getting in its own way.
Right. Some research has shown that learning in a relaxed state can be more effective because it cuts down on those mental distractions and allows you to process information better.
So instead of passively trying to absorb facts, you're creating the best conditions for your mind to actually learn.
Exactly. Plus, Silva's approach stresses active engagement and visualization, which have also been shown to be great for memory and comprehension.
Okay, and let's circle back to dream control for a minute. The book talks about how you can use it to basically program your dreams to solve problems.
Oh yeah, that was a really intriguing one.
But how does that work?
Silva believed that dreams are a powerful way to tap into our creativity and intuition, that part of our mind that's always working below the surface. He outlines a process where you set an intention before you fall asleep, you visualize what you want to achieve, and then, in a sense, you give your dreaming mind a task to work on.
It's like assigning your subconscious mind a homework assignment before bed.
Yeah, that's a fun way to think about it.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you're actively engaging your subconscious in the problem-solving process, even when you're asleep.
That's pretty wild. And the book also talks about how the Silva method can help with breaking bad habits like smoking or overeating.
It does. According to the book, it's all about using visualization and positive affirmations to overcome those ingrained behaviors.
So instead of just trying to use willpower, which we all know can be tough.
Right. It's more about retraining your subconscious mind to want something different.
So you're actually trying to shift those deep-seated desires, change how you relate to the habit at its core.
Exactly. Willpower alone can be fleeting, so the method focuses on getting to those underlying beliefs and patterns driving those behaviors.
I see. The book also lays out this 6-step process for using your mind to improve your health.
Oh, yeah.
It suggests that our thoughts and emotions can have a huge impact on our physical well-being.
And that connects with what we know now about the mind-body connection.
Right.
Silva was way ahead of the curve in recognizing the importance of positive thoughts and beliefs for our overall well-being.
So it's not just wishful thinking, it's about actively shaping our mental and emotional states to actually promote healing and better health.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging how powerful our thoughts and beliefs are, and then taking charge and creating a more supportive internal environment for our physical health.
Okay, so far this has all been about using the mind for practical stuff, right? But then the Silva method also gets into ESP, presenting it as a natural ability that we can train and develop.
This is where things get especially interesting.
Yeah.
Silva didn't shy away from exploring the less conventional aspects of human potential. He actually believed that ESP wasn't some supernatural gift, but rather an ability that's hidden within all of us, waiting to be developed through specific techniques.
Wait, trained? Like ESP is a skill you can practice.
That's what he proposed.
That's pretty wild. How would that even work?
He describes this process called effective sensory projection. It's where people learn to project their awareness beyond their physical bodies.
Project their awareness. Okay, now that sounds super abstract. Can you break it down a little bit?
Sure. It's all about shifting your perception. Expanding how you're aware of things beyond what your physical senses tell you. Imagine it like tuning into a different frequency, like you're picking up on information that's outside of your immediate surroundings.
Okay, so it's like you're honing a different kind of perception, a more subtle way of taking in information.
Yes, that's a good way to think about it. And it ties in with this idea of a mental laboratory.
Oh, right, the book talks about that.
It's another visualization technique where you create this mental space, like a lab, but you fill it with symbolic instruments that you can use to address problems psychically.
So instead of doing a physical experiment, you're experimenting inside your own mind.
Precisely. You're harnessing the power of your imagination to visualize different possibilities and potential solutions.
That's fascinating. What about these mental counselors mentioned in the book? Are those like imaginary friends with special powers?
Not quite. Think of them more like archetypal guides that you can call upon for guidance and insight. Silva even compared them to Socrates' semi-divine being.
Wow.
The one Socrates said gave him wisdom.
So it's like these mental counselors are a way to tap into some universal knowledge, a higher intelligence or something.
That's one way to interpret it. It's like he believed that we each have a connection to a source of guidance and wisdom that goes beyond what we can understand with our limited minds.
That's really interesting. But this all sounds so complex. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who would be skeptical, especially about the ESP stuff. What does Silva say about that?
He acknowledged that, of course. He knew ESP was controversial and that many people wouldn't accept those claims. But he believed that through training and practice, people could develop their own proof, come to their own conclusions based on their own experiences.
So it's about personal exploration and discovery, not blind faith.
Exactly. He encouraged people to approach the method with an open mind and try the techniques to see what worked for them.
And one of those experimental techniques is the case-working exercises, right?
Yeah.
Where people who've been trained in the method try to psychically scan someone's body to find out if they have health problems.
That's right. The goal of those exercises is to train people to access and understand this subtle energetic information.
Okay, gotta admit, that sounds a little unnerving to me. But the book talks about how these case studies have shown remarkable accuracy.
Yeah, it really emphasizes trusting your intuition. The idea is that by quieting your mind and tuning into those subtle energetic cues, you could become more sensitive to information that you might otherwise miss.
It's definitely thought-provoking, even if you don't buy everything about it. The Silva method really makes you think about all the possibilities of the human mind.
I agree.
And how much we might be capable of.
Absolutely. Whether or not you buy into every single claim, it really pushes us to consider what human consciousness is all about and explore the hidden potential that might be inside each of us. And it's important to remember that Silva, he didn't see these ideas as like some kind of parlor trick. He really thought we could use this potential in everyday life, to help ourselves and even other people.
Right, and it definitely gets you thinking, even if parts of it seem a little hard to believe. But beyond Silva's own writing, is there any scientific evidence to back up these claims? Has anyone actually studied whether the Silva method works?
That's where it gets really interesting. We actually have some excerpts here from research papers and articles that looked into the potential benefits of the method. One example is the work of Dr. Clancy D. McKenzie. He was a psychiatrist who studied how the method affected his patients.
Wait, so he was using mind control techniques on people with mental health conditions?
Yeah.
That's a pretty bold move. What made him want to try that?
Well, at first he was skeptical, just like a lot of people are. But he noticed that a lot of his patients who'd taken the Silva Mind Control course were saying they felt a lot better, both mentally and emotionally.
Oh, so he saw a real change in them after they'd done the course.
Exactly. And it made him want to dig deeper.
So what did he do? What did his research actually involve?
He and a colleague of his conducted this study with 189 psychiatric patients. Some of them even had severe diagnoses like psychosis and schizophrenia.
Wow, so we're not talking about like everyday anxiety here. These were serious conditions. I'm guessing they weren't teaching these patients how to bend spoons with their minds. What were they actually focusing on?
The focus was on practical stuff, things like relaxation techniques, managing stress, coping mechanisms, and how to use positive self-talk to your advantage.
Sounds pretty down to earth for something called mind control. So what happened? Did he see any real improvement in these patients?
The results were actually pretty amazing. The vast majority of the patients, even those with those severe conditions, showed improvement after taking the course. They said they felt more emotionally stable, less anxious, their self-esteem was better, and they felt more in control of their lives.
Wow, that's incredible. But was this just a temporary thing, or did it last? Did they track the patients over time to see if those changes stuck?
That's a really good question. And they did follow up with the patients. And guess what? They found that those positive effects lasted for months after the training. It wasn't just a fleeting feeling. It seemed like their mental and emotional states had genuinely shifted.
Okay, that's some compelling evidence. But what about the claims about better memory and faster learning? Is there research to support that part of the method?
There are actually some really interesting studies on that too. One that comes to mind is the work of Dr. George Dessau. He was an educational psychologist who looked into how the Silva Method affected students and how they did in school.
So they were trying to find out if these mind control techniques could actually help students learn better and get better grades.
That's fascinating. What was Dr. Dessau's approach? He did studies at 3 different high schools. And before and after the students went through the Silva Mind Control course, he measured things like their ego strength, how well they handled pressure, and how confident they were.
Yeah, those qualities definitely seem like they'd be important for success in school. Being able to focus, stay calm during exams, and believe in yourself. What did the study show about how the training affected these qualities?
The results were pretty remarkable. The students who'd taken the mind control course showed huge improvement in all 3 areas: ego strength, staying calm, and self-assurance. And these changes were so big that it was clear they weren't just due to chance.
So the students weren't just feeling good, they were actually developing traits that would help them succeed in school.
Exactly. And the students themselves said they felt more confident, more focused, and better able to handle tough academic challenges. And it wasn't just talk. It actually showed up in their grades and their overall performance too.
Okay, now I can see why this method has gotten so much attention. But what about the really controversial claims? The ESP stuff and psychic abilities. Has any legitimate research actually been done on those aspects of the Silva Method?
There actually has.
Really?
Yeah. It's not as much research as the practical applications, but there have been a few scientific studies specifically focused on the ESP claims. There's a study by Dr. F.J. Bremner, a psychologist at Trinity University.
What was he looking into?
He wanted to see if people trained in the Silva Method could actually control their brainwaves, specifically the alpha rhythm, which is that relaxed, focused state we keep talking about.
So basically, could you learn mind control techniques to control your own brain activity? That's pretty mind-blowing. What did they find out?
Well, the results were really intriguing. Dr. Bremner found that the people who'd been trained in the Silva Method could actually consciously induce alpha brainwave activity whenever they wanted, even when their eyes were open.
So they could actually change their brain state just by using these techniques. That's incredible. What kind of implications would that have?
Being able to control your own brainwaves could be huge. Think about it. Stress management, staying focused, maybe even reaching deeper levels of consciousness. It has a lot of potential.
Okay, so that kind of starts to bridge the gap between those more practical uses and the psychic side of things. But what about those case-working exercises where people are supposedly scanning each other's bodies? Is there anything to back that up?
That's where the research gets more anecdotal. There haven't been any big controlled studies on those exercises specifically. But there are tons of reports from people who've done the Silva Mind Control training who say they've had amazing accuracy with those psychic diagnoses.
So more like personal experiences and stories than hard science.
Right. And it's really hard to measure or prove those kinds of subjective experiences with science. But they're still really interesting, especially when you consider all the research showing that our minds are capable of so much more than we thought.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? But even if we put aside the extraordinary stuff for a minute, the evidence for the more practical benefits of the Silva Method, things like less stress, better focus, even being more creative, is pretty convincing.
It all comes down to this.
Yeah.
Our minds are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And when we learn how to use that power to control our thoughts and beliefs, we can make huge changes in our lives.
So it's not about magic or some kind of mystical power. It's about taking the reins and actually controlling how our minds work. And that's something everyone has the potential to do, right?
Absolutely. Whether you fully embrace everything the Silva Method says or not, it's an incredibly empowering message.
Yeah.
It's about realizing that we have so much more power over our thoughts, emotions, even our physical well-being than we tend to think.
It's like Silva was saying, hey, you're not just along for the ride, you're actually in the driver's seat of your own life, and you can steer yourself towards your goals, towards a more fulfilling life.
And that message resonates with so many people, you know, students who are stressed about exams, business people facing challenges, anyone who just wants to feel more at peace and be happier. The Silva Method gives people the tools to tap into their true potential.
It's like having a mental toolkit to help you navigate life. But with all this focus on the positive, are there any downsides to the Silva Method? I mean, could messing with your subconscious actually backfire somehow?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it's a valid concern. Like any powerful tool, you got to use it wisely. Some people have worried about potential psychological risks, especially for people who already have mental health conditions.
So it's not like a magic cure-all that works for everyone.
Exactly. You have to be careful and use common sense.
Yeah.
And Silva himself even said that it's important to get help from a mental health professional when you need it.
Right. Makes sense.
He also stressed that it's important to stay balanced. It's not about becoming some kind of robot who's just totally focused all the time.
Yeah, we don't want to end up like those characters in a dystopian novel.
Right. It's about integrating these techniques into a healthy, balanced life. It's about becoming more empowered, not turning into someone who's totally controlled by some system.
Okay, I can see that. But even with those cautions in mind, the Silva Method still has a really positive view of what humans are capable of, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. At its core, it's a message of hope and empowerment. It says that we can create positive change in our lives, overcome limitations, and achieve incredible things. It's about recognizing the amazing power that's within each of us.
Yeah, it's like we all have this potential to tap into a deeper level of awareness and control within ourselves.
And Silva thought this could ripple outward, you know? Like this idea of individual empowerment. He thought it could spread and make a difference in our communities and maybe even the world.
Oh, right. He had some pretty big ideas about the future of mind control, didn't he?
Yeah, he really did. Silva imagined a world where these techniques were taught in schools, used in healthcare, even used to solve global problems.
Wow, a world changed by the power of the mind. That's quite a vision.
It might sound a little utopian to some people, but it shows just how much he believed in the power of these techniques to really transform things.
And even if we don't achieve world peace through mind control, it's still a powerful idea that we can use our minds to make positive changes in our own lives and in the world around us.
It all circles back to that idea of personal agency, right?
Right.
Recognizing that we're not just along for the ride, but we're actually active participants in creating our own realities.
That's a great point. So where does all this leave you, dear listener? We've explored the ideas, the techniques, even the scientific research on the Silva Mind Control Method. What stands out to you? What piques your curiosity?
Maybe you're intrigued by the idea of using your subconscious mind to solve problems or achieve goals.
Or maybe you're drawn to that concept of mental house cleaning, creating a more positive space in your mind.
The great thing about exploring a method like this is that it gives you a whole toolkit of different techniques, so you can choose what feels right for you, what aligns with what you want to achieve.
And remember, even if you don't suddenly develop telepathic powers or become a master of your dreams, just the act of exploring your own mind can be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, it's about expanding your awareness, questioning what you believe, and discovering new aspects of yourself.
So we encourage you to keep digging into the Silva Mind Control Method. Try out some of the techniques and see what happens.
You might uncover a hidden talent, find a new solution to a problem that's been bugging you, or just feel more peaceful and clear-headed.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with this thought. What if the limits of our minds are far greater than we think?
What if we really can unlock a level of awareness and control that we never thought possible, just by using the principles of the Silva Method?
It's an exciting thought. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep believing in the incredible potential that lies within each of you.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp.